What happens when the weakest wolf in the pack discovers she was never meant to be weak at all? For Alara Thorne, life had always been measured in whispers and downcast eyes. An Omega in the Silvercrest pack, she existed at the bottom of a hierarchy as ancient as the moon goddess herself. While Alphas commanded and Betas thrived, Omegas served, invisible, unheard, barely tolerated. And Alara? She had learned to make herself smaller still, moving through pack life like a shadow that apologized for existing. But when Alpha Kale Stromberg stood before the entire pack under the harvest moon and severed their fated bond with a declaration that echoed through the mountains, everything changed. And what happens next, no one was prepared for. Not the pack that cast her out, not the parents who had bound her power before she could even walk, and certainly not the ancient guard who had been searching 500 years for a queen they'd sworn to serve before she was born. The ceremony began at twilight. Alara stood at the edge of the gathering circle, where Omegas were permitted to observe but never participate. The scent of wood smoke and anticipation hung heavy in the autumn air, mingling with the forest perfume that always clung to packlands, pine, earth, and something wild that lived in the marrow of every shifter. Her own scent, a delicate blend of lavender and morning dew with an undercurrent of wildflowers, seemed pitifully gentle among the more aggressive signatures that marked dominance. She'd learned to keep it muted, drawing her presence inward until even her scent became apologetic, architected narrative framework for fantasy rejection scene. I'm starting the story as instructed, need to establish the hierarchy. Alara's low-status pack gathering ceremony billed toward the rejection. Stay in cinematic third-person past tense, use scent signatures, keep it flowing without breaks. Current word count, 250. Need to reach a funny 500 for Act 1. Tonight, Alpha Kale would announce his chosen mate. Everyone knew it would be Alara. How could it not be? 3 months ago, under a blood moon, the bond had snapped into place between them with such force that she'd gasped aloud, drawing stares from wolves who'd never bothered to notice her before. The golden thread of connection had wound itself around her soul, thrumming with recognition, with destiny. Fated mates were sacred, blessed by the moon goddess herself. Alara had dared to hope. She watched Kyle now as he stood at the center of the circle, firelight dancing across features that could have been carved from granite. His scent, forest depths, dying embers, the electric charge before a storm, and cold steel rolled over the assembled pack in waves of pure dominance. Every wolf present felt the weight of his alpha power, that indefinable quality that made submission instinctive. He was magnificent. And for 3 months, Alara had felt him through the bond, had sensed his moods, his presence, the very rhythm of his heartbeat echoing in her own chest. Pack, Kyle's voice carried without effort, deep and commanding. We gather under the harvest moon to honor tradition and secure our future. Alara's heart hammered against her ribs. Her wolf, usually so quiet, stirred within, a small, eager movement like a puppy waking. Strength preserves the pack. Power ensures our survival. The alpha bond is not merely tradition. It is the foundation upon which we build our territory, our safety, our very existence. Something cold began to pool in Alara's stomach. An alpha must choose a mate worthy of standing beside him, one whose strength complements his own, one whose bloodline will produce alphas to lead future generations. Kale's gray eyes swept the crowd. They passed over Alara without stopping, without even a flicker of acknowledgement. Therefore, I claim Celine Blackthorne as my chosen mate. The world tilted. A woman stepped forward from the beta section, Celine, all dark hair and darker eyes, her scent a heady mixture of cinnamon and iron with an undercurrent of blood. She moved with the confident grace of a warrior, her smile sharp as broken glass. But the bond! The words escaped Alara before she could stop them, barely a whisper, but in the sudden silence they carried. Kyle's gaze finally found her. His expression didn't change, no regret, no guilt, nothing but cold pragmatism. The bond, he said, his voice cutting through her like a blade of ice, is an accident of magic, useful for common wolves perhaps, but an alpha's duty transcends the whims of fate. He raised his hand, and power gathered around him, visible, tangible, a distortion in the air itself. I, Cale Stromberg, Alpha of Silvercrest Pack, formally reject the fated bond between myself and Alara Thorne. The pain hit like a physical blow. It wasn't metaphorical or gentle. The golden thread that had wound through her very soul began to unravel, each fiber tearing away with exquisite precision. Alara's knees buckled. She couldn't breathe, couldn't think past the sensation of something vital being ripped from her chest. She heard herself scream, a thin, broken sound that seemed to come from very far away. Around the circle, wolves shifted uncomfortably. Some looked away. Most watched with the detached curiosity of predators observing weakness. The Omega cannot hold such a bond, Cale continued, speaking to the pack now, not to her. It was a mistake from the beginning. The moon goddess sometimes errs. We correct those errors through strength of will. The bond severed completely. Alara collapsed onto the cold ground, her body convulsing as phantom pain radiated through every nerve. Her wolf howled inside, a sound of such pure anguish that it seemed to echo in her bones. Remove her. Kyle's words were dismissive, already turning away. She disturbs the ceremony. Hands gripped her arms, pack guards, their sense aggressive with the thrill of sanctioned violence. They hauled her upright, her feet dragging, and began pulling her toward the edge of the clearing. Wait, please, Alara managed, her voice breaking. I didn't do anything wrong. You were born wrong. Celine's voice drifted after her, sweet as poisoned honey. Some wolves are meant to lead, others are meant to serve, and some, she laughed, the sound crystalline and cruel. Some are meant to disappear. They dragged Alara past her parents. She met her mother's eyes, amber like her own, but cold now, distant. Her father stood rigid beside his mate, his weathered face carefully blank. Please, Alara whispered, the words shaped by bleeding lips. Help me. Her mother looked away. Her father's jaw tightened, but he said nothing, did nothing. They stood among the crowd, motionless as the guards pulled their daughter past them and toward the pack's border. The Silvercrest territory ended at a river, beyond which lay the wild lands, unclaimed forests where rogues hunted and winter came early, and wolves who entered alone rarely returned. The guards deposited Alara on the near bank, the icy water soaking through her clothes as she sprawled in the shallows. Cross, one of them ordered, his scent sharp with aggression and something else, satisfaction perhaps at inflicting sanctioned cruelty. You're banished. If you set foot on Silvercrest land again, it's a death sentence. But I have nothing, no supplies, no shelter. The words came out in desperate gasps. Dark was falling fast, and the October air already carried winter's promise. Should have thought about that before being born defective. The guard grinned, teeth flashing white in the dimness. Move, Omega, or we'll help you across. Alara forced herself upright, her entire body screaming in protest. The wound where the bond had been torn away throbbed with each heartbeat, a phantom ache that promised never to fully heal. She stepped into the river, gasping as the frigid water rose to her waist, then her chest. By the time she crawled onto the far bank, her fingers were blue, her teeth chattering so violently she bit her tongue and tasted copper. She looked back once. The guards had already gone. The soft glow of the ceremony fire was visible through the trees, and she could just hear the sounds of celebration, howls of joy, music, laughter. They were celebrating her destruction. Alara turned and stumbled into the wild lands as the first snowflakes began to fall. The storm hit within an hour. What had started as gentle snow transformed into a blizzard that shrieked through the trees like something alive and hungry. Alara pushed forward, her wet clothes freezing against her skin, ice forming in her hair, her eyelashes. She couldn't feel her feet anymore. Her wolf, traumatized by the bond severing, had retreated so deep inside that Alara wondered if she'd ever shift again. Without access to her wolf's healing, her strength, even her warmth, she was as vulnerable as a human. More so perhaps because humans had the sense to prepare for winter. This is how I die, she thought, and the realization carried no fear, only a distant, detached acceptance. Rejected, discarded, frozen in a forest where no one will find my body. Her foot caught on a root hidden beneath the snow. She went down hard, her palm splitting open on frozen ground. Blood, shockingly red against white snow, dripped from her hands. Alara tried to stand. Her legs wouldn't hold her. "Get up," she whispered to herself, the words slurring. "Get up, you stupid, worthless—" "No, I'm not worthless," he was wrong. But even defiance couldn't warm frozen limbs or restart a body sliding toward hypothermia. Alara curled on her side, drawing her knees to her chest, and felt snow begin to cover her like a shroud. Through the howling wind, she thought she saw lights. Not firelight, but something colder, blue-white, like moonlight made solid. Hallucinating, she thought distantly. That happens, before the end. The lights moved closer, resolving into shapes, eyes, massive eyes glowing in the darkness, too large to belong to any normal wolf. Alara couldn't even muster fear. She watched, detached, as the shapes solidified. Wolves, enormous wolves, their shoulders higher than a tall man's head, their fur ranging from pure white to shadow black to silver that seemed to shimmer with its own light. 1, 2, 3, 4. She counted them as they emerged from the storm, surrounding her fallen body. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 wolves, each radiating a power that made Alpha Kale's dominance feel like a candle beside a bonfire. The largest, a male with fur the color of aged oak bark and eyes like winter snow touched with ice, stepped closer. His scent reached her even through the storm, ancient oak, winter snow, pine forests, and the electric charge of an approaching tempest. He was beautiful, terrifying, impossible. Alara's eyes drifted closed. She felt warmth surround her, massive bodies pressing close, sharing heat, forming a living barrier against the storm. The last thing she heard before consciousness fled was a voice, deep and resonant, speaking directly into her mind in a way that should have been impossible. "Sleep, little queen. We've been waiting for you." Awareness returned slowly, dragging Alara up from depths that had felt permanent. She was warm. That realization came first, so unexpected that her eyes snapped open, warm and dry and lying on something soft. Firelight danced across rough stone walls. The scent of burning wood mingled with others, leather, earth, aged wood, and that same complex fragrance of oak and winter that had surrounded her in the snow. Alara sat up too quickly. Her head spun, and a gentle hand pressed her shoulder, easing her back down. "Slowly," a female voice said, warm as summer honey. "You nearly died. Your body needs time." Alara turned her head. A woman sat beside her, or something that appeared. As a woman. She had silver hair that fell to her waist and eyes the color of amber mead. Her scent was moonlit meadows and spring rain, utterly unique. "Where?" Alara's voice emerged as a croak. "An old watchtower, abandoned decades ago, but serviceable enough." The woman smiled, and something in that expression was too knowing, too ancient for her youthful face. "I'm Lyra, and you, little queen, have questions." "I'm not a queen. I'm nothing, an omega, rejected," and the words caught in Alara's throat. The wound where the bond had been still ached, would probably always ache, a scar on her soul. "No." A male voice, the same one that had spoken in her mind. "You were told you were nothing. There's a difference." Alara turned her head the other way. A man stood by the fire, tall, broad-shouldered, with silver-shot dark hair and those impossible eyes, pale as ice on deep water. Scars traced his jaw, his throat, visible marks of ancient battles. He moved with casual power, every gesture controlled, measured. "You're—" Alara struggled to form words. "The wolves, in the storm." "Yes." He approached, and Alara's instincts, usually screaming for submission around dominance, stayed silent. This wasn't an alpha's power demanding subjugation. This was something older, something that required nothing because it simply was. "I'm Ronan Stormwrath, first guard of the Lunar Court. These are my warriors, sworn to protect the matriarch." "I don't understand." "No, but you will." Ronan crouched beside her, bringing his eyes level with hers. "Tell me, Alara Thorn, do you know what a binding spell is?" The question seemed to come from nowhere. Magic? But shifters don't. We're creatures of the moon goddess, not mages." Shifter magic and human magic are different, yes, but they can intertwine, especially at birth, when a wolf pup is most vulnerable. Ronan's expression was gentle, but something fierce burned in those pale eyes. Someone could, theoretically, bind a child's wolf, lock away her power, her true nature, make her appear weak when she was born strong. Alara's heart began to pound. Why would anyone? Fear, Lyra interjected softly. Fear of power they couldn't control, fear of prophecy, fear of change. Prophecy? The word came out barely above a whisper. Ronan stood, moving to the fire. When he spoke, his voice took on a cadence that suggested words repeated through generations. When winter bleeds and the bond breaks, the matriarch will rise from death's cold lake. She will be silver and gold and moonlit might, born of the lowest, crowned in lunar light. She will come when packs have lost their way, when strength means only cruelty and power means betray. Silence filled the tower. That's, Alara's voice trembled, that's a nursery rhyme. Old wolves sing it to pups. It's just a story. All prophecies start as stories, Ronan said quietly, until the day they become truth. You're saying I'm... What? Some prophesied queen? That's insane. I'm an Omega. I can't even shift properly half the time. I have no power, no strength. You had no power, Lyra corrected, and her smile was sad. Past tense. Tell me, little queen, what happened tonight before you were cast out? Kyle rejected our bond. And to do that? He severed it, forcibly broke the connection. Magic, Lyra said simply. Violent, painful magic. And when that magic tore through you, through your soul, she gestured gracefully. What else might it have torn? Understanding crashed over Alara like ice water. The binding. The binding, Ronan confirmed. 23 years, your power has been locked away, probably since infancy. But tonight, when Alpha Kale's arrogance led him to sever a fated bond, something that requires immense magical force, he didn't just break your connection to him. He broke the spell keeping me weak. Yes. Alara sat fully upright, ignoring Lyra's sound of protest. She pressed a hand to her chest, to that space where the bond had been, where something else now stirred, something vast and old and hers, finally, after a lifetime of absence. Her wolf. Not the small, quiet presence she'd known. Something else, something that had been sleeping, bound, caged, something that was waking up. Hello, a voice purred in her mind, her wolf, but not layered with power and awareness that felt nothing like the timid creature she'd known. It's time, little one, time to become what we were always meant to be. Alara's hands began to shake. I can feel it. Gods, I can feel her. It's like she was buried and now she's rising, and she's not small, she's not weak. No, Ronan said, and satisfaction gleamed in his eyes. She's not. But who? Who would bind me? Who would even know how? The silence that fell was answer enough. No, Alara shook her head violently. No, my parents wouldn't. They raised me. They loved you, Lyra finished gently. They did. They do. But love and fear can coexist, little queen. And the night you were born, when your power first manifested, when your newborn wolf was pure silver with eyes like liquid gold. They were terrified, Ronan continued, so they found a mage who could help them, who could bind your wolf, make you appear as an Omega, keep you safe by making you invisible. Safe? The word came out bitter as poison. They made me nothing. They let the pack treat me like dirt for 23 years. They watched me get rejected and cast out, and they said nothing. They were wrong. Ronan's voice cut through her rising hysteria, firm but not cruel. They acted from fear, and their fear made them blind to your suffering. That debt must be answered. But first, he extended a hand. First, you must learn who and what you truly are. Alara stared at his hand. Large, scarred, steady. The hand of a warrior who'd seen centuries pass. She took it. The moment their skin touched, power arced between them. Not a mating bond, nothing so simple, but recognition. Her wolf surged upward, meeting whatever ancient thing lived inside Ronan, and for a moment Alara could see it, 10 wolves, massive beyond measure, waiting 500 years for a prophecy to fulfill itself. Waiting for her. "What do I do?" she whispered. Ronan's answering smile was fierce. "You shift, little queen. For the first time in your life, you let your wolf run free." They took her outside as dawn broke. The storm had passed, leaving the world wrapped in pristine snow that glittered like diamonds under the rising sun. 9 others joined them, the remaining members of Ronan's guard, each as impossibly powerful as he. Alara learned their names: Lyra of the silver hair, Cade with his russet fur and eyes like molten copper, Thorn, whose scent was wild roses and steel, Ash, who moved like smoke given form, Briar, whose laugh could shake mountains, Marcus, whose quietness held oceans, Sarah, whose beauty was sharp as broken glass, Dax, whose scars told stories of ancient wars, and twins Luna and Saul, whose presence together created an almost unbearable weight of power. Each knelt before her, each pressed a fist to their chest and called her matriarch. Alara wanted to protest, to deny, to run from the enormity of what they claimed she was, but her wolf wouldn't let her. "Shift," the voice purred, eager now, straining against 23 years of chains that no longer held. "Let me show you what we are." "I don't know how," Alara admitted, looking at Ronan. "The binding, even with it broken, I don't know how to reach her, not fully, not like this." "You do," Ronan said simply. "You always have. You were just taught to make yourself small, to compress your power into something palatable. Now," his eyes glowed, literally glowed with inner light. "Now you expand." Alara closed her eyes. She'd shifted before, of course. Every wolf could, even Omega's. But it had always been difficult, reluctant, her wolf small and weak, the process painful. This was different. Her wolf rose like a tide, like a wave, like the moon cresting a horizon. Power flooded through Alara's veins, not burning, not destroying, but filling every space that had been empty, healing every wound that had been left to scar. The transformation began. It didn't hurt. That was the first shock. Shifting had always been accompanied by pain, by bones grinding, by the sensation of her body tearing itself apart and reforming. This felt like coming home. Her bones didn't break. They flowed, lengthening, strengthening, restructuring themselves with liquid grace. Her spine curved, vertebrae expanding, and it felt right, natural, the way breathing felt natural. Fur erupted across her skin, not brown or gray like she'd always been, but silver, pure silver that caught the dawn light and seemed to glow from within. It covered her in a cascade of moonlight, made solid, soft as silk, thick as armor. Her muscles developed, coiling beneath her. Skin, power made manifest. She grew. Gods, she grew. Her shoulders rising higher, her body expanding until she stood taller than any wolf she'd ever seen, larger than Kale, larger than any alpha. Energy erupted from her in a visible wave. Snow lifted from the ground, swirling around her in a miniature storm. The air itself seemed to vibrate with frequency just beyond hearing. When her transformation completed, Alara stood on 4 legs and looked down to see her reflection in a patch of ice-crusted water. A massive she-wolf stared back, her fur silver as starlight, her body powerfully built yet elegant. But her eyes were what made her gasp internally. They'd always been amber, normal, unremarkable. Now they burned with lunar fire, gold shot through with veins of pure white, glowing softly in the dawn light. She opened her jaws and howled. The sound that emerged wasn't a howl at all, not really. It was deeper, richer, layered with harmonics that made the air shiver. It echoed through the mountains, and for miles around, every wolf, pack wolf, rogue wolf, wild wolf, stopped what they were doing and felt their instincts scream recognition. That was the sound of royalty, of divine right, of power that bent the world to acknowledge it. "This is who we are," her wolf said, and for the first time, Alara didn't feel separate from that voice. They were one, unified, complete. This is who they tried to hide, who they tried to kill with silence and shame and cruelty. We are the matriarch. Around her, the 10 guards shifted, and Alara understood finally what they truly were. Not wolves, or not just wolves. They were dire wolves, creatures of legend, twice the size of normal shifters, their forms touched with the same otherworldly power that now sang through her veins. They were her sworn swords, her protectors, warriors who had waited 5 centuries for her to be born. Ronan approached her in his wolf form, aged oak fur, massive beyond measure, those ice-pale eyes filled with satisfaction. He lowered his head in a gesture of respect that would have made any normal alpha demand submission. "You are magnificent," his voice said in her mind, and she realized she could hear all of them now, her guard, connected through something deeper than pack bonds. "Welcome home, my queen." Alara looked at herself, at her massive paws, her glowing fur, the size and strength that radiated from every line of her new form. She wasn't weak. She'd never been weak. She'd been caged. And now, finally, she was free. The days that followed blurred together in a symphony of discovery. Alara learned to control her shifting, to move between forms as easily as breathing. She learned that her senses weren't just enhanced, they were transcendent. She could smell emotions, could track a rabbit 3 miles away, could hear heartbeats and whispered conversations from distances that should have been impossible. But more than physical power, she discovered abilities that left her breathless with possibility. She was empathic, not just reading surface emotions, but understanding the deep currents of feeling that moved through every living thing. When Cade cut himself during training, Alara had reached out instinctively and felt his pain, and somehow, without understanding how, she'd pulled it away, leaving his skin healed and unmarked. "A matriarch can heal," Lyra explained, watching with approval, "can strengthen her pack, can draw poison from wounds, can even, in extreme cases, call wolves back from the edge of death." Alara practiced on small things, healing cuts, easing aches, mending strain. Each success felt like unwrapping a gift she hadn't known existed. She learned to project her voice, to speak in the minds of others, to give commands that wolves obeyed before conscious thought could intervene. It wasn't mind control, nothing so crude, but rather a presence that made others want to obey, want to please, want to follow. "That's the mark of true royalty," Ronan told her during a training session, his human form barely winded despite hours of combat practice. Not forcing submission, but inspiring devotion. Alara spent hours with each guard member, learning their stories, their scars, their hopes. They'd been waiting so long, bound by prophecy and duty, unable to serve until she manifested. Thorn taught her combat, his movements economical and devastating. "You're strong," he said after she'd successfully blocked his strike for the first time. "But strength without skill is just flailing. Again." Sarah showed her how to read pack dynamics, how to see the invisible hierarchies and power structures that governed wolf society. "Every pack is a tapestry," she explained, her sharp beauty softened by genuine warmth. "Pull one thread, and the whole thing shifts." The twins, Luna and Sul, taught her about lunar magic, how the moon's phases affected shifter power, how to draw strength from moonlight, how to feel the goddess's presence in the silver glow. Days turned to weeks. Alara grew stronger, more confident, more herself. The scared Omega who'd been cast out was transforming into something else entirely, not just powerful, but assured, capable, ready. Her found family gathered around her each night, sharing meals and stories, their bond deepening from duty into genuine affection. They teased her, challenged her, protected her, taught her. For the first time in her life, Alara felt wanted, chosen, home. But she knew it couldn't last. The Silvercrest pack was still out there. Kyle was still out there. And eventually, they would discover that she hadn't died in the wild lands. Eventually, they would come. The scout appeared on a clear December morning. Alara was practicing her shifting when Cade's warning howl split the air. She transformed mid-movement, her body flowing from human to wolf in a heartbeat, and raced to where her guards had assembled at the tower's perimeter. A young wolf, crouched in the snow, his brown fur matted, his scent sharp with terror. One of Kyle's scouts. She recognized his face from pack gatherings, though she'd never known his name. He'd clearly come expecting to find ruins, maybe bones. Instead, he found 10 dire wolves surrounding him, each radiating enough power to make his submission instinctive, absolute. and standing at their center, silver fur gleaming in winter sunlight, was a wolf that made his mind struggle to process what his eyes saw. Alara shifted to human form. Ronan immediately draped a cloak around her shoulders. They'd learned to keep clothes nearby for exactly this reason. "Tell Alpha Kale," she said, her voice calm, carrying none of the uncertainty that had once characterized her speech, "that Alara Thorne is alive, that she has claimed the Wildlands as her territory, and that if he wishes to discuss borders or treaties, he may request an audience." The scout just stared, his mouth open, his scent flooded with disbelief. "Go!" Ronan growled, and the command in his voice sent the young wolf scrambling backward before he turned and fled. Alara watched him disappear into the trees. "He'll tell them everything." "Yes?" Ronan's hand settled on her shoulder. "Are you ready?" She thought about the Omega who'd been rejected, humiliated, cast out to die. She thought about the lies her parents had told, the binding that had stolen her childhood, the pack that had treated her as less than nothing. She thought about the queen she'd become, not despite those experiences, but shaped by them, tempered by suffering into something that could understand both weakness and strength. "Yes," Alara said, "I'm ready." They came 3 days later. Alara smelled them first. 27 wolves, their scents a mixture of aggression, curiosity, and fear. Kyle's signature of forest and embers and steel led them, accompanied by Selene's cinnamon and blood. Her guard assembled without needing orders, forming a line between the approaching pack and Alara. She stood at the tower's entrance, wearing a simple dress of dark blue that Lyra had somehow procured, her long hair loose around her shoulders. She looked nothing like the Omega they'd cast out. Kyle stopped at the tree line, his pack spreading out behind him. He stood in human form, shirtless despite the cold, displaying the tattoos and scars that marked his status. Selene stood at his right hand, her beauty predatory and sharp. "So," Kyle said, his voice carrying across the snow-covered space, "the rumors are true. The Omega survived." "The matriarch survived," Ronan corrected, his tone pleasant and absolutely deadly. "Choose your words carefully, Alpha. You address royalty." Kyle's lip curled. "Royalty? She's a weak Omega with delusions and some borrowed wolves. I came to offer her a chance to return to the pack, in her proper place, of course. But I see she's found other fools to deceive." Alara felt her guards tense, their collective power rising like a wave preparing to crash. She raised one hand, and they stilled instantly. She stepped forward. "You came to offer me mercy?" The word tasted like ash. "How generous, how alpha of you." "Alara, matriarch," she interrupted, her voice quiet but cutting through his with ease. "You don't get to use my given name anymore, Kyle. You severed that right when you severed our bond." Something flickered across his face. Regret? Pain? It vanished too quickly to name. "You're angry. I understand. The rejection was necessary. For the pack's strength." "The pack's strength," Alara repeated. "Tell me, Kale, is your pack stronger with me cast out? Are your borders more secure? Your wolves more loyal?" She tilted her head. "Or have you noticed the unrest, the whispers? The question that keeps being asked, if an alpha can reject a sacred bond, if he can cast out a fated mate, what other traditions might he discard when convenient?" Kyle's jaw tightened. "You didn't come here to offer me mercy," Alara said. "You came here because you're afraid of what I represent, afraid of what the scout told you he saw." "I fear nothing." "Then prove it." Alara smiled, and it wasn't a kind expression. "Shift. Show me the alpha power you valued over destiny. Let's see if it's enough." "You're challenging me?" Disbelief colored Kale's voice. "You can't seriously—" He didn't get to finish. Selene attacked. She'd been waiting for an opening, for a moment when Alara was distracted, and she moved with the speed and precision of a trained warrior. She shifted mid-leap, her dark wolf form arrowing toward Alara's throat, claws extended, teeth bared. Alara didn't move. She didn't need to. Her wolf rose to the surface, not a full shift, just a flex of power, a reminder of what lived beneath her skin. Her eyes blazed gold-white, and she spoke a single word directly into Selene's mind. "Stop." The command wasn't a request. It was law written in the fabric of reality, backed by power that made alpha dominance look like a child's tantrum. Celine froze mid-air. Her body locked, every muscle rigid, and she dropped to the snow like a puppet with cut strings. She lay there, unable to move, unable to shift back, completely paralyzed by the weight of Alara's will. Silence crashed over the clearing. "Let me be clear," Alara said into that silence, her voice carrying to every wolf present. "I didn't come here for revenge. I didn't build my strength to destroy you. But you need to understand something fundamental about what happened in this clearing." She gestured to Celine, still frozen. "Your chosen mate just attacked me without provocation, without honor, without even the courage to issue a formal challenge. She tried to kill me through treachery." Alara crouched beside Celine's paralyzed wolf form. "I could kill her right now. Every wolf here knows it. I could crush her with my power, tear her apart with my strength, and by every law we hold sacred, I would be within my rights." She stood. "But I won't. Because I'm not you, Kale. I don't discard what's inconvenient. I don't destroy what I don't understand." Alara released Celine from her hold. The dark wolf scrambled backward, her scent soaked in terror. "However," Alara continued, "she cannot remain as your beta. A wolf who attacks through treachery has no place in leadership. Celine Blackthorn, you are stripped of your rank. You may remain in the pack as an Omega, learning the humility you should have been born with, or you may leave. Choose." Kyle found his voice. "You have no authority to—" "I have every authority." Alara's voice cut across his like a blade. "You rejected the matriarch, Kale Stromberg. You severed the sacred bond. You cast out the one wolf the moon goddess herself chose to stand beside you, and in doing so, you lost the right to claim her decisions have no power over your pack." She gestured, and her guard shifted. All 10 of them. 10 dire wolves, each massive beyond measure, each radiating power that made the assembled Silvercrest pack whimper and show their throats involuntarily. They were nightmares made flesh, legends given form, and they stood behind Alara with absolute devotion. Ronan, in his enormous wolf form, padded forward to stand beside Alara. His thoughts projected to every wolf present. "This is the matriarch. This is the one spoken of in prophecy, the one we have waited 500 years to serve. This is the queen of wolves, the healer of packs, the moon goddess's chosen. And you," his gaze fixed on Kyle, "rejected her." One by one, the Silvercrest wolves began to lower themselves, not in submission to Kyle, he noticed, and Alara could smell the bitter tang of his realization, but in submission to her. They were acknowledging what their alpha refused to see. Kyle stood alone, his pack bowing around him, his chosen mate stripped of rank, his rejection now written in pack law as the greatest mistake of his reign. He fell to his knees, not gracefully, not willingly, but the weight of pack opinion, the collective belief of every wolf present, drove him down. "Mercy," he said, the word barely a whisper. "Matriarch, I was wrong. I was arrogant. I believed strength meant only physical power, and I was blind to the truth standing before me." Alara looked at him. This alpha who'd seemed so magnificent mere weeks ago, who'd torn her heart out without hesitation, who'd nearly killed her through casual cruelty. She felt nothing. Not hate, not love, not even satisfaction at his humiliation. Just distance, like looking at a storm from high ground, knowing it can't touch you anymore. "You will face justice," she said, "but not death, not banishment. You will serve your pack as you should have from the beginning, with humility, with wisdom, and under the oversight of the council I will establish." She turned her attention to the assembled wolves. "I am Alara Thorn, once called Omega, now acknowledged as matriarch. I claim these wild lands as my territory. Any wolf who wishes to join me is welcome. I will never turn away those seeking sanctuary." Her voice strengthened, carrying power that made the trees seem to lean closer. "But know this. In my territory, cruelty has no home. Strength is not measured by who you can break, but by who you protect. Rank is earned through service, not inherited through birth. And every wolf, Omega, Beta, Alpha, is worthy of dignity and respect." She looked at her parents, who stood at the back of the assembled pack, their faces white, their scents sharp with guilt. Even those who have wronged us can find redemption, Alara said, if they're willing to earn it. Her mother met her eyes, and tears tracked down her face. The pack began to howl, not the aggressive challenge howls of dominance, but the ceremonial acknowledgement of truth, of power recognized, of order restored. Alara's guard joined them, their massive voices underlaying the others, creating harmonics that seemed to resonate in the bones of the earth itself. And Alara threw back her head and howled with them, her voice silver and gold and moonlight made sound, the cry of a queen finally crowned. The changes came swiftly after that day. Alara established her court in the old tower, which her guard helped expand and renovate into something worthy of the Lunar Court, the name that had existed in legend but never manifested until now. Wolves came from every direction, some from Silvercrest, seeking her justice and protection, others from distant packs, drawn by rumors of the matriarch's rise. Rogues who'd been cast out found sanctuary. Omegas who'd been treated as less than nothing discovered their worth. Her parents came to her 3 days after the confrontation. They knelt in her receiving hall, no longer humble wood but stone carved with lunar symbols that seemed to glow in moonlight, and confessed everything. The binding spell purchased from a desperate mage. The fear that had motivated it. The years of watching their daughter suffer and being too afraid to undo what they'd done. "We were cowards," her father said, his voice breaking. "We were so afraid of your power that we stole your childhood, and there's no apology sufficient for that." Alara looked at them for a long time. "No," she finally said, "there isn't. But I'm not the Omega you tried to create anymore. I'm the matriarch I was born to be, and a matriarch understands that fear can make good people do terrible things." She stood. "You'll serve the court. You'll help other parents understand that power in their pups isn't something to fear, but to nurture. You'll spend the rest of your lives making sure no other child grows up believing they're worthless because of their rank." They wept and thanked her, but Alara felt no triumph in it. Forgiveness, she was learning, wasn't a single moment but a process, a choice she'd have to make again and again. Kyle came to her as well, alone, stripped of his arrogance. "I don't expect forgiveness," he said. "I don't deserve it, but I want you to know, the bond we had, I felt it shatter too. And every day since, I've felt the absence where you should be." "You chose that absence," Alara replied. "You valued power over partnership, ambition over destiny." "I know." He looked older than she remembered, the weight of his mistake aging him. "I'm learning, matriarch, learning what real strength means. It's a slow lesson." "Good," she said. "Keep learning. Your pack needs an alpha who serves them, not one who rules them." Ronan became her primary advisor, his centuries of experience invaluable. But more than that, he became something else, a presence in her life that felt like destiny of a different kind, not a fated mate bond. Those didn't come twice, but a chosen connection, built on respect and understanding and growing affection, the kind of bond that asked for consent, that grew slowly, that was given rather than imposed. One night, under a full moon, he found her standing on the tower's highest point, looking out over her territory. "Regrets?" he asked, his shoulder warm against hers. "Some," she admitted. "I wish I'd had this power earlier. Wish I could have saved myself years of suffering." "Perhaps," Ronan said quietly. "But would you be the queen you are now if you hadn't known weakness, hadn't experienced cruelty? You don't lead with arrogance because you remember what it felt like to be dismissed. That's not weakness, Alara. That's wisdom." She leaned against him, his scent of oak and winter comforting. "When did you know? That I was the one you'd been waiting for? The moment you counted us in the snow, dying but unafraid, and called us beautiful." He smiled. "You saw monsters designed to terrify, and you found them beautiful. That's when I knew our search was over." Alara turned to face him. "And if I choose you? If I want this bond, this connection, what then?" "Then we build it together," Ronan said simply. "No destiny forcing us together, no magic binding us, just choice every day to be together." She kissed him, and the bond that formed wasn't golden and faded, but silver and chosen, and somehow that made it more precious. 6 months after her rejection, Alara stood before the first gathering of the Lunar Court. Wolves from 20 different packs had assembled, drawn by tales of the matriarch, curious about this new power rising in territory that had been wild for generations. She wore a dress of silver and white, her hair crowned with a circlet of moonstone that Lyra had crafted. Her guards stood behind her, resplendent in their armor, their faces proud. "I am Alara Thorn," she said, her voice carrying to the farthest corner of the great hall they'd built. "Once I was called Omega, called worthless, called weak. I was rejected, discarded, left to die." She let that sink in. But I didn't die. Instead, I discovered the truth that had been hidden from me, that I was never weak. I was bound, caged, made small by those who feared what I could become. She stepped forward. "Many of you have similar stories, of being told you weren't enough, of being pushed down because others feared your rise, of learning that the hierarchies we've built aren't natural law but social constructs that can be changed." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. "I don't seek to destroy all hierarchy," Alara continued. "Some structure is necessary. But I propose we build something new, something where rank is earned through service, where power is measured by protection, where every wolf, regardless of birth designation, has the opportunity to rise through merit and dedication." She gestured to her court. "I am matriarch of the Lunar Court. I claim these wild lands and extend sanctuary to any wolf who wishes to build this new order with me. We will be strong, but our strength will lie not in cruelty but in unity, not in domination but in harmony." The response was thunderous. Howls of approval, of hope, of wolves ready to be part of something larger than themselves. Later, as the celebration continued into the night, Ronan pulled her aside. "There's news," he said quietly. "From the eastern mountains. Something is stirring there, something old and dark. The blood moon rises in 3 months, and there are whispers of an ancient evil that wakes when the moon bleeds." Alara felt a shiver run down her spine, not fear exactly, but anticipation. "Then we prepare," she said. "Whatever comes, we face it together." Ronan's hand found hers. Together. She looked out at her court, at wolves laughing and dancing, at Omegas no longer cowering, at a new order being born from the ashes of the old. She was no longer the rejected Omega, cast out to die in winter's cold. She was the matriarch, the lunar queen, the one who'd been broken and remade stronger, and whatever darkness approached, she would be ready. And so Alara Thorn's journey from discarded Omega to lunar matriarch began its next chapter. She learned that true strength isn't about never being broken. It's about what you become when you rise from the breaking. Her story reminds us that the labels others give us don't define our worth, that sometimes rejection is redirection, and that our greatest power often lies dormant until circumstance forces us to claim it. What did you think of Alara's transformation? Have you ever felt dismissed or underestimated, only to discover your own hidden strength? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I love hearing your stories and reactions. If you enjoyed this tale of supernatural justice and found family, please hit that like button and share this video with someone who loves werewolf romance or stories about overcoming adversity. Your support helps me create more content like this. Don't forget to subscribe and ring that notification bell so you never miss a new chapter. Alara's story continues as ancient darkness rises and the Lunar Court faces its greatest test. You won't want to miss what happens when the blood moon rises and old enemies emerge from shadow. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you in the next chapter. Until then, may you find your own pack, claim your own power, and never let anyone convince you that you're less than the queen you were born to be. Claude is AI and can make mistakes. Please double-check responses.